Immune. Let's get started.
Paula Reed, I know you've been listening to this decision. What have we heard?
We have. Of course, this is not a thumbs up, thumbs down. This is a complicated decision. We just got it here. It's an opinion from Chief Justice John Roberts finding that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial acts. So what does that translate to? Well, this is something we saw that was sort of signaled in...
Let me tell you, okay? Anything you can massage into the official act category, you can get away with. Like, for example... if, let's say, the current sitting president orders SEAL Team 6, as is in his purview as commander-in-chief, to assassinate his political rivals, that is technically under the purview of the presidency. If, for example, the president, sitting president, decides to do a military coup, that's now legal. Let's go, boys. Let's have some fun with it. Why the fuck not? You feel me? Okay. Let's go, Brandon. What is happening? Dark Brandon time.
Or argument, because what this means is that the former president cannot be prosecuted for anything that was officially part of his job when he was in office. And that's significant because even his own lawyers conceded during oral argument that not everything that is alleged in this indictment was an official act. So now the question is, what does the special counsel do here? He could potentially try to cull down this indictment to a more narrow one, just focusing on unofficial acts, and then try to proceed with this case. Still an open question, though, about whether even a slimmed down case could go before the election. 3 reasons for that. One, the judge overseeing this, Judge Tanya Chutkan, she has signaled that the lawyers should get some lead time on this. I mean, we're a couple months out from the election. The idea of putting the Republican candidate for the presidency on trial, where he would have to be in court months, weeks before the election, that's something that would likely have us right here again before the Supreme Court. Also, the Attorney General, unlikely to allow something to go ahead that quickly, but we'll see. But right now, this decision, the Supreme Court finding that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial acts. This opinion, very, very long. It's going to take us a while to get through everything.
Right now, I'm looking at an excerpt from the Roberts written decision. He says, quote, Trump asserts a far broader immunity than the limited one we have recognized.
Send habit to Gitmo. That's what I'm talking about, dude. Get freaky with it. Get fucking freaky with it. Throw all the governors that you don't like in Guantanamo Bay. Okay? Fuck it. Literally go into the Department of Education and wipe out all the records. Who's going to stop you? Who's going to stop you? You're the president. It's an official presidential purview. Okay? Do it. Do the damn thing. Fucking YOLO mode. Okay? SCOTUS said Iran-Contra was unprosecutable. Nixon. Literally, Nixon. Everything Nixon did, vindicated. Okay? Wasn't wrong.
Not meaning the court. The text of the clause provides little support for the absolute immunity claim that Trump asserts. So they're rejecting that. But in essence, all of the details as to the allegations made, the accusations made in the Jack Smith indictment of Donald Trump, not all of them, but many of them, the court is saying, we are sending this back to the district court. They have to decide whether Trump's communications with the American people, calling them to rally to the Capitol on January 6th, and everything that happened after that, the disruption of the counting of the electoral votes, the sham electors scheme, all of that, whether or not that's an official act.
I mean, I'm just saying, why wouldn't it be an official act? He did it with the Department of Justice. Half the shit he did, he was the president talking to a governor. Literally everything Donald Trump has done in office, things that he was impeached for, like a pay-for-play scheme, holding up congressional funding, congressionally approved funding to Ukraine, with threats that if you don't find me blackmail on my political rival, technically that is not illegal. You're the president. You're talking to a foreign official. That's like well within your purview. Okay? This is entirely presidential. Which is so crazy because, like, as the president, you can still do illegal shit as the president. Okay? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, that's Nixon. Nixon did that, right? Nixon did that. Donald Trump did that too, which is crazy. And I said this before when like this was first being brought in front of the Supreme Court. I thought, they'll probably do like some fucking silly ass carve out, right? They'll probably try to do like a silly ass carve out at most. They won't give him like immunity as like immunity for things that the president can do as the president. They won't give him like, they won't shelter him from that because that's like broad reaching. That's a broad reaching decision. And it's completely antithetical to like the founders, right? And what this country's foundation looks like. I mean, this is like the idea that no one is above the law, the idea that we do not want God, king, emperors. Like that was perhaps one of the only American principles that I agree with and that is supposed to be held up in theory, right? This is a direct attack against that. This is a direct attack against that principle. This is a direct attack against the founders, right? I'm not saying that like people are obviously not, I'm not saying that people held on to that value. Like I'm sure, yes, of course, in the United States of America, many people are above the law, but never officially, right? Like never to this degree. So it is really damning. This is a really damning decision. Especially a president being like, yeah, no, actually, we've decided that presidents can do whatever the fuck they want. We've decided presidents are above the law. Like it's pretty goddamn un-American, you know?
Act has to be determined by the U.S. District Court. And Adley Honig, you were saying what's most significant about that is the U.S. Supreme Court could have said, we're remanding this to the district courts, the lower court, and whatever they say goes, and we will uphold that. They didn't say that.
Exactly. To the contrary. This case will not go before the election. It will not be tried before the election, and here's why. Supreme Court has just said there is such thing as criminal immunity. The test, as we anticipated, is essentially official acts versus unofficial acts. We're sending it back to the district court, and this is an important detail, the court says several times, whatever the district court finds can be appealed before trial. Jack Smith had made an argument of, well, maybe the district judge, the trial judge can work it out and send it to the jury, and then the jury can separate official from unofficial acts. Several times in this opinion, the Supreme Court, the majority, says explicitly whatever the judge decides about what's official or unofficial, what's immune or not immune, that can be appealed back up. 0% chance that happens before November.
So why?
I like that we have the distinction now, which is like official crimes versus unofficial crimes. Like, if he steals a fucking candy bar, like that's prosecutable, right? But as president, if he sends the SEAL Team 6 to go and, I don't know, steal all the candy bars from the factory directly, then it's like, well, technically he's authorized to do that. So it's like within the official scope of the presidency, or at least something that you can defend on that idea. That's wild. I saw a reporter tweet earlier basically saying that after this, if Trump wins, he's going to start every sentence with as an official act. He will say it 100 times a day to do anything he wants. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fucked up. Does this mean that a president could never be prosecuted for war crimes? I mean, no president was ever going to be prosecuted for war crimes anyway, but this is definitely official, yes. At least not by the American courts. Surely calling the Georgia governor to ask for votes is unofficial? No, that's the president who maybe genuinely was afraid that there was voter fraud happening and wanted the fucking Georgia governor to investigate and find 11,746 votes. Before today, you could say that that is illegal and ridiculous and what the fuck are you doing? Except after today, well, he did it in a presidential manner, so who's to say it's illegal? Sorry, it's 11,780 votes, not 86. I was wrong. I was off by 6. It's great.
I do that. I mean, if they are saying, hey, we're the U.S. Supreme Court and we're going to have the final say on this no matter what, Why not just make it clear? Everything's delineated in the indictment. Why not just make it clear? And if Judge Chutkan decides...
No, the official act isn't legal. He can't be prosecuted is all. Yes. Wait, what did I say? No, yeah, he can do illegal shit.
X, Y, or Z, we will agree with that. Why not just be explicit?
Because the Supreme Court, they're in a court of appeals, they want to see a record, right? And I think, with Judge Chutkan just kind of...
Bro, this guy looks like the shittier version of the general that they have all the time. What was it, McMaster or whatever? You guys can't find another type of guy? What's happening? He looks exactly like that fucking general, dude. General Thumb Man.
Dismissing out of hand.
That's so irrelevant to the...
all conduct whatsoever. The president has no immunity for all criminal conduct, for any criminal conduct. They've gone back and said, no, you need to go look at this and then come back to us based upon what we've said in this opinion.
And the other thing is, it's the right and rules governing when and how to appeal aren't set in stone or aren't entirely clear. And I think they felt some need to delineate that this is an appealable order. They aren't always, and sometimes some things you have to wait to appeal until the end of a trial. They're giving whoever it is, and probably Trump, the opportunity to appeal during trial.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that if Judge Chutkan had ruled differently initially and said, basically closer to this, the conversations with the Justice Department are clearly official acts, I'm not going to count them, but the other ones, like if there had been a less of a...
Bro, like the conversation with the Justice Department or official acts is so crazy. Like that, even that in and of itself literally means that you can legally do a coup or illegally do a coup, and if it works, then that's great. If it doesn't work, it's still not prosecutable because you did it as the president. Like that is what this... maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but like, remember the hypothetical that I brought forward to you guys, and then they literally used that shit early on against the Supreme Court, where like I think it was Sotomayor who asked the question to Trump's prosecutors or Trump's lawyers and was like, so do you think the president can use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate someone? And they said, yes, under a hypothetical, that could be perfectly valid. That could be perfectly considered permissible. That is literally now, after the Supreme Court decision, like maybe I'm wrong, and I'm just going off of like what I read from what Sotomayor was saying, but that kind of feels like that's what's allowed now. That is like allowed. It's valid. So to them, to everyone listening, I say, Joe, send them in, baby. Put a bunch of fucking doorbusters up in this bitch, okay? Send them to Mar-a-Lago. Send them to Mar-a-Lago. Send the fucking door kickers into Mar-a-Lago. Get it done. You feel me? Get it done. It's not illegal. The Supreme Court gave you the opportunity. Don't be a bitch. That's the only way you're going to win. Okay? Yeah, I mean, she literally brought this up, which was like a hypothetical, but now not so hypothetical. Sotomayor's dissent. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Take a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune, 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 immune. Which, by the way, it's ironic because with the exception of like ordering SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, Trump basically did the other two things. That is the reason why they're having this fucking deliberation. That's the reason why the majority, supermajority Republican Supreme Court made this decision known. The entire reason why this happened was because Trump was doing that, okay? He tried to do the shittiest coup of all time, no military riz whatsoever, constantly kept calling the generals gay and fucking woke and losers, so they didn't do a coup with him, but he still tried nonetheless, turned into an insurrection, yada, yada, yada. That's one thing. The other thing is he also did quid pro quo with other foreign leaders. Like he straight up did that. He also, and this is, I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I'm pretty sure there was a lot of fuckery going on with the presidential pardons as well. This motherfucker pardoned Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, and every other person that was in his like orbit on his like up until the last day of office. So it's pretty wild, and none of that shit's prosecutable because that's like within the purview of the president. Whew, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty wild shit, dude. This is like, I feel like this is a constitutional crisis, but I guess at this point, we're so used to it, we just don't even think about it. We're just like, whatever, you know?
Sweeping, of course he can be indicted on any of this stuff. Ruling by Judge Chutkan, would this not have been ended up where it was today? Did she open?
I like that they also were like, hey, by the way, if you do try to continue prosecuting him, you got to bring it back up to us again. And who knows what we'll say next time. You know what I mean?
The door for a decision like this.
She did. I think Judge Chutkan's going to have a lot of regret. When she issued her opinion, it just said there's no such thing as automatic immunity for everything a president does his whole 4 years. When I was reading that, I said, okay.
And the Supreme Court said, hold up, that's not true, actually. We've decided that you're wrong. That's crazy, man. That's a... Like, what are we doing? What the fuck are we doing here? It's a clown show. Total fucking clown show.
Where's Part B? I expected Part B to be, and I find, having reviewed the record and reviewed the documents, and I find that even if there is such thing as immunity, he was outside the scope. And by the way, that's what the Court of Appeals did on their ruling. The problem is, as Jim was saying, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, they're not fact finders. This can only be done at the district court level. And so I suspect Judge Chutkan is feeling some regret. It wasn't like it was some leap of logic that she should do that. This happens. There are hearings. For example, in the Georgia case, Mark Meadows is trying to get his case.
Yeah, actually, it's the district court judge's fault. Yeah, totally. Bro, that's crazy. Okay. Like, I'm sure if she crossed her T's and dotted her I's, the SCOTUS would have fucking reacted in the same way that they're going to react to this, because they are not a serious legal body. They are not actually applying some kind of interpretation that is differing from one another. Okay. They're just literally managing the influence that they have alongside the interest that they have. Okay. That's why when you're a Republican, you fucking react like a Republican would. If you're a Democrat, you react like a Democrat would. Like there's some differences. You know, you have like a little bit of a centrism, at least for those institution lovers in the Supreme Court, you know, John Roberts being one of them now. But ultimately, yeah, this was the expected. This was the, well, not to this degree, but like some kind of mechanism to defend Donald Trump, to ensure that Donald Trump's court case is not held before he officially becomes president, was the ultimate goal here.
Over to federal court. The question there is almost the same thing. Was Mark Meadows in or out of the scope? You know what the federal judge did there in Georgia? He held a hearing. Mark Meadows testified. He said, I find, based on this hearing, you're outside the scope. If Judge Chutkan had done that, we'd be in a very different position.
Where I don't agree with that, though, is that either of the parties would have had an opportunity to appeal the portion of that opinion that they did not agree with, because it would have been somewhat of a split the baby gobbledygook that they would have had a right to appeal. You can't tell me that either Jack Smith or Trump's team would not have attempted to take it up, and the Supreme Court would have created similar gobbledygook.
But we would have had an answer
today.
right now.
Well,
if she'd already done the hearing, we'd know right now.
They would have gone up to the Supreme Court, though, and I think
we'll never know. This is on Earth. This is on Earth too. All I can tell you is, having been covering the U.S. Supreme Court and you know, and they're just to go back to Bush v. Gore.
Yeah.
The reason that the conservative court in Bush v. Gore was able to do what they did is because the Florida Supreme Court let them.
Yeah.
The Florida Supreme Court made so many bad decisions and bad rulings, it was easy for the U.S. Supreme Court to come in and say, no, stop the count.
Yeah, what's interesting here, and there's a great line, I'm skimming it very quickly, in Justice Sotomayor's dissent, where she says, you know, the majority pays lip service to this idea that the president is not above the law, and then in effect says that for certain official acts, the president is in fact above the law. It's how do you sort out what this actually means?
Let's do that right now, because in the oral arguments, there were certain examples that were given. Let's explore a couple of those and what today's decision means. First one was raised by Justice Sotomayor back in, was this April? What about getting SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Let's roll that tape.
if the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
That was a stunning moment in April. Did the court just say, yeah, you can assassinate a political rival?
No, I don't think they did. That's a ridiculous answer by Donald Trump's team, a dangerous and reckless answer. One really important thing.
Why? Like, no, that is what the Supreme Court said, though. What do you mean? Oh, that's a ridiculous and dangerous answer? No, that is literally what the Supreme Court decided. Like, that is what it is. You can consider that to be fucking reckless or dangerous, but that is ultimately the case. I feel like, you know how I've talked a lot about Americans in the Western world coping with like how much better they are than like Eastern traditions and stuff. Like we orientalize bribery. We're like, oh, Pakistan, India, there's so much bribery there. And then we codify it, right? We codify bribery. We make it legal within the boundaries of federal regulation, you know, federal regulation, right? What do? We call it lobbying. Corporate lobbying is legal. It's somehow different than bribery. And I feel like this is a very Russia moment. You know, we talk about like, oh, Vladimir Putin assassinates his political rivals. Like, it's really fucked up. And it's like, here we have the American Supreme Court literally saying like, no, it's fine. Like, it's illegal, but it's within, it's an official, as long as it's an official act, it's not prosecutable. So how is that any different then? Like, how is that any different? How is that any fucking different? Like, we're over here chirping about Russia all day, every day, but we're like, yeah, no, it's actually legal now, so it's different. We're doing it through legal channels.
The basis for Donald Trump's legal argument that maybe he can order an assassination and still be okay is this preposterous argument that they offered below that, well, a president can only be indicted if he's first impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. The Supreme Court explicitly rejected that argument. They said impeachment has nothing to do with this. That's not the test.
To your question, Jake, someone's got to decide what's the official act, right? And that, the challenge here, and this was what Sotomayor was getting at in her point, somebody has to make the call as to whether even the preposterous...
Like, it's just so stupid. You just added another hurdle to clear. Oh, is this an official act actually, or is this not an official act actually? Who gives a fuck? What do you mean? Like, that's insane. It's just illegal. What you are adding an unnecessary hurdle, an additional bar to clear in order to prosecute a former president. Okay, that's ridiculous. And they did this with fucking Chevron deference too. They did this with the other decision. Now you can't have a regulatory agency act under the boundaries of like any of the former acts that gave the EPA and all these other federal regulatory agencies the power to fucking react, which they rarely ever do so anyway. But when they did, now they can't do that. Now they're open to litigation. Like, now a court has to fucking come in and decide whether or not they're allowed to do certain things. And that in and of itself is also adding another additional layer to the regulatory body's mechanisms. It's just completely, utterly unnecessary. And the ultimate goal is to basically allow presidents to do whatever the fuck they want without any sort of legal scrutiny. That's number one. And allow corporations to do whatever the fuck they want without any sort of regulatory scrutiny. It's great. And this happened in the same fucking week, by the way. The Supreme Court is nutty, dude. They're so insane.
SEAL Team 6 example falls under the ambit of official acts, and that's litigation in months in court.
No, agreed. I think that's something that will have to be decided by the trial court if we were faced with that preposterous type of scenario. No doubt about it.
Jamie.
I just have a quick question for the lawyer. So one of the big concerns is getting evidence out in front of voters before November. We now don't think a trial is possible.
No.
Is it possible, one lawyer just texted, would an evidentiary hearing be a way for Jack Smith to get some of that evidence out there in the public record.
Sure. So the district judge now has to have an evidentiary hearing. She can absolutely do that before the election. She can hear from witnesses. We're not going to get a verdict. I guess the judge will say some things were official or unofficial, but there's not going to be a convicted felon tag hung on Donald Trump for this case. I also should add, this is a major problem for the Georgia case because the factual allegations are very similar for Fani Willis's case. Now, that case is beset by its own series of problems, but now they're going to have to contend with this immunity problem as well.